Name is Andrew Yang. He has been raising small dollar donations online. Campaign says they're going to hit that threshold. That would put him in the debate. All those other names up there. Here's a name we haven't heard too much about.
Yep.
Andrew Yang could be there with them this summer.
You set that up beautifully, Steve Kornacki, national political correspondent, because guess who's going to join me in a minute? Andrew Yang. Andrew is an entrepreneur from New York. He's worked in the tech industry. His platform centers on something called Universal Basic Income, which he's rebranded as the Freedom Dividend. Something I'm going to get into in a little depth a little bit later. But first, Yang says his plan is necessary. It's a continuation of capitalism because it would help address the negative effects of automation in the labor force. He's also campaigning on several other policies, including decriminalizing opioids, Medicare for all, easing the transition to self-driving vehicles. Joining me now, Andrew Yang, 2020 Democratic presidential candidate and founder and CEO of Venture for America. Andrew, good to have you here. Thank you for being with us.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
So for folks who are drinking from a fire hose, trying to determine how these candidates all, are set apart from each other, where are you? What do you want Andrew Yang to be known for? What's the elevator pitch for you?
Well, to me, the job of the Democrats is to address the problems that got Donald Trump elected in 2016. And if you look at the voter district data, you see that one of the driving forces behind his victory was that we automated away 4 million manufacturing jobs in Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Missouri, Iowa, all states that he won. And now my friends in Silicon Valley know that we're about to do the same thing to millions of retail workers, call center workers, fast food workers, truck drivers, and on through the economy. So we need to wake up to the fact that we're in the third inning of the greatest economic and technological transformation in the history of our country, what we're calling the fourth industrial revolution. And my campaign is about helping millions of Americans transition through this historic period.
I put a list together of some of your policies. I tried to take out those that overlap with everybody else in the Democratic field. You've got a lot of interesting policies that you're interested in pursuing if you were to become president. You defy an obvious place on the political spectrum with some of these policies that my viewers can see rolling on the screen. In a world that wants to know whether you're a capitalist or you're a social democrat or you're one of the 55% of Democrats who want the party to be more moderate or you're one of the 41% that wants them to be more progressive, where do you position yourself?
You know, I would categorize myself as a problem solver. I'm driven by facts and data. And I think the socialism-capitalism dichotomy in particular is breaking down because no one could have predicted artificial intelligence and self-driving cars and trucks. I have a friend, Eric Weinstein, who said something I thought was incredibly perceptive. He said that we never knew that capitalism was going to get eaten by its son, technology, which is what we're in the midst of right now. So what I think we should do is we need to evolve to the next stage of capitalism that actually revolves around how we are doing, how human beings are doing in this country.
You have been propelled with the help, as Steve was talking about, of a devoted online following, the Yang Gang in certain places it's called. You're on almost all of these platforms. You've got a big following. You do have, and a few of our viewers have asked me to ask you about this, you've got a portion of your following on the deep web, which is often populated by people on the alt-right or conspiracy theorists. You have disavowed any of their thinking. Do you have any idea why they're as interested in you as they are?
You know, it's a bit mystifying to me. I mean, if you look at me, I'm the son of immigrants. I'm running on a platform of humanity first. But as you said, I've disavowed anyone who has any sort of hateful or racist ideology, because that's the opposite of what I stand for.
But you've got a lot of people. It feels populist, not that part, but your following on social media feels populist. It feels like people think that you are part of a movement or leading a movement that can gain attention and capture the attention of the American public. How you manage that in the Democratic nomination is going to be interesting. But if you were to become the Democratic nominee, what's your argument against Donald Trump?
Well, what I would say, again, is that we need to solve the problems that got Donald Trump elected. And the best person to beat Donald Trump is someone who can peel off 10, 20, 30% of his voters, because I've met now hundreds, thousands of Trump voters who've said to me, I voted for Donald Trump and I'm going to vote for you. So I can get the progressives, I can get the Democrats, and I can get the independents, I can get conservatives. I can build a coalition that will beat Donald Trump in 2020.
You have written a book called The War on Normal People, the truth about America's disappearing jobs and why universal basic income is our future. Coming up next, I'm going to dig into the policy proposals that are getting the most attention. Andrew Yang's so-called Freedom Dividend. It's a form of universal basic income, $1,000 a month, no strings attached to every American over the age of 18. How's it going to work? I'm going to ask him after this break. Okay, back with Andrew Yang and the idea of universal basic income. It's an old idea where the government agrees to pay a minimum, let's call it a salary, to each and every member of society, regardless of their earning or their employment status, no strings attached. The idea, give everyone a fair chance to achieve a minimum quality of life and then just maybe eliminate poverty and inequality by lifting all boats. Now, this is gaining some traction, especially in Silicon Valley, because advances in automation and robotics have the potential to put millions of people out of work. A study by McKinsey, the management consulting firm, says technological changes in the workplace could replace as much as 1/5 of the world's labor force, 800 million workers, by the year 2030. Proponents of a universal basic income say the system would ease the threat of poverty and homelessness because recipients wouldn't start from zero. Andrew Yang's plan guarantees payments of $1,000 a month, $12,000 a year to all U.S. citizens over the age of 18. Everyone over 18 gets $1,000 with a catch. And citing the page, his page on this, people already receiving benefits would have a choice, would be ineligible to receive the full $1,000 in addition to current benefits. So it's either what you already get or a new $1,000. If you didn't qualify for anything, you still get the $1,000. The benefits we're talking about are welfare, food programs, food stamps, disability insurance, that kind of thing. Andrew Yang is back with me now. Andrew, you're talking about the idea. You mentioned trucking, right? Good job. Lots of demand. We need more truckers. But one day in the future, when AI and self-driving vehicles become a reality, it's suddenly going to fall off a cliff.
That's right.
And that's the future you're talking. That's one example of the future you're talking about. We will have more people than work.
Yeah, and Americans can see it in their main streets right now, where 30% of malls and stores are closing because Amazon's sucking up another $20 billion in commerce. And working in retail is the most common job in our economy. So we have to wake up to the fact that we're in the midst of this right now. And if you imagine everyone in the country getting $1,000 a month, $12,000 a year, as a parent, we all know what that would mean. It would mean that kids are healthier and stronger and have a better chance to learn, graduation rates go up, mental health improves, relationships improve, domestic violence goes down, hospital visits go down. And we can make this happen. This is capitalism where income doesn't start at zero, and we can 100% afford it. Our economy's up to $20 trillion.
What does $12,000 mean, though? How does that meaningfully change somebody's life?
Well, if you imagine a household that has 2 adults, $24,000 a year would be a game changer, because right now, 78% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. 57% can't afford an unexpected $500 bill. And this financial insecurity has bred this mindset of scarcity that is turning us against each other and tearing us apart. So if you have $1,000 a month coming in, and then you can look at your son or daughter and say, hey, when you turn 18, you're going to get $1,000 a month, then all of a sudden the boot comes off of your neck. And then you can hit your head up and start making assertive plans for the future.
How do you pay for it?
Well, we have to look around. Who are going to be the big winners in this era of artificial intelligence and autonomous vehicles? It's going to be Amazon, Google, Uber, Facebook. And then we all know Amazon paid 0 in federal taxes last year. So I would submit that it is not their fault they paid 0 taxes. That's their job. But it's our fault. If we've designed a system where $1 trillion tech company can pay 0 in federal taxes, then something's gone wrong. So the way we pay for this $1,000 dividend for every American adult is we join every other advanced economy in the world and have a value-added tax that would then give the American public a tiny sliver of every Amazon sale, every Google search, every Facebook ad. And because our economy is now so massive at $20 trillion, a value-added tax at even half the European level generates $800 billion in new revenue, which combined with current spending, economic growth, and putting all this money into people's hands, cost savings on things like incarceration and homelessness services and emergency room health care, and then the value gains from having a stronger, healthier population would pay for $1,000.
So it's not revenue neutral in the way that an anti-tax person would say it's revenue neutral. You're saying you will pay for it here and you will relieve federal and state funding on other levels, because if people have a basic minimum income, they will not be requiring other government spending in the same way.
Yeah, you end up saving a lot of money. This is the trickle-up economy, from human beings and families and communities up. And as an entrepreneur and CEO, what we say all the time in our organizations is you have to invest in people. But then in the public sector, we have the opposite approach. We're like, oh, we can't invest in anyone. A prison guard in New Hampshire said to me a number of weeks ago, he said, we spend so much money on incarceration, we should pay people to stay out of jail. So we're trying to save money on the front end. We just end up spending even more money on the back end, but in much more destructive and punitive ways. communities.
You talked about emptying malls and stores in America. You've even got a proposal about revitalizing neighborhoods that have been blighted by the end of malls and big anchor tenants. Many of those same communities are communities where manufacturing workers were laid off because of technological advances or outsourcing. Many of those places are places where coal mining jobs have been lost, where the opioid epidemics have set in. You've got very specific policies about how you deal with suburban renewal and rural blight.
Yeah, I do. And when I was in Iowa, I was meeting with the Democratic legislators in Des Moines, and then one of them said to me, they said, we've been searching for a way to help restore some kind of future for rural areas, and Iowa is predominantly rural. And they say that the freedom dividend is the most impactful thing that anyone's been suggesting, because you can see a lot of these rural areas are getting progressively depleted, a lot of suburban areas the same thing. And the freedom dividend ends up revitalizing many of the Main Street economies by putting money into people's hands that they're going to spend locally.
Andrew, thanks for joining us to have this conversation. Hopefully we'll be able to continue to have it, because you've got so many policies we can't get it out in a short discussion like this.
I will come back anytime, Ali. I really enjoyed the convo.
Thanks for being here, sir. Andrew Yang, Democratic presidential candidate. Well, still